Hi, good evening to all. Today we are going to look at an important topic of the banking theory. So today's topic is the classification of banks and their futures. It's also known as the kinds of banks or the structure of banks. The first one is the Reserve Bank of India. Under this three banks. The first one is the cooperative banks. The second one is the commercial banks. It has two types, scheduled banks and non-scheduled banks. The third one is the development banks. Under cooperative banks, there are two kinds of institutions. The first one is short-term credit institutions. The second one are long-term credit institutions. Both are together called as term credit institutions also. Under commercial banks, there are five sectors. The first one is the public sector banks. Second one is foreign banks. Third one is old private sector or new private sector banks. Followed this local area banks and the regional rural banks. It's also known as RRB. The third category of the development banks, under this category, four kinds of banks. The first one is SIDB, NABARD and NHB and Exim Bank. We will look at them now, these banks in more detail. The first one is a central bank. It's also known as RBI, Reserve Bank of India. It is the apex bank. What do you mean by apex bank? It is in the top position of the banking structure. Controls the flow of currency in the economy, regulates the other banks, regulates the commercial banks and the development banks and cooperative banks. It has legal regulations also that should be followed by the other commercial banks. Works as a banker to government. It acts as a banker to government, helps stimulate growth and control inflation, provides assistance to other banks. If any other banks need any financial assistance, they will approach to RRB, the RBI, then RBI helps them. It's also called as a banker's bank. Why is it so? Its functions relevant to bank, which means bank gets a financial assistance from RBI. That's why it's called a banker's bank. The next next one is commercial banks, which do the banking business with the aim of earning profits. Whereas as RBI now aim is to provide the assistance to public. They don't have motive of earning profits, but commercial banks main aim to earning profit. It has three types public sector banks, which has majority of shares are held by the government or the RBI. Example the State Bank of India. The public sector banks major shares are held by the government. The next one is the private sector banks, in which majority of shares are held by private individuals or entities. Example the HDFC Bank. The next one is the foreign banks, which are registered outside of India but have their branches in India. Their head office is located in foreign countries, but their branches operate here in India. Example Citibank. The third category is the development banks, which provide financial assistance to various industries for the purpose of machinery and equipment, modernization and expansion of the industry. Example the IFC Bank. IFCA Bank. The main motto of these banks is to provide financial assistance to the industries. The next sector is cooperative banks, whose main objective is to provide financial assistance to economically weaker sections of the society, especially in the rural areas and small scale industries. Example the New India Cooperative Bank. It has three types: primary credit societies, which are formed at a village or a town level. Operations of them are limited to a very small area. These societies operates at village and occupied in a very small area. For that people it will operate. The next one is the district central cooperative banks, which operate at the district level. They act as a link between primary credit societies and the state cooperative banks. It is an intermediate bank between primary credit societies and the state cooperative bank. It operates at the district level. Then state cooperative banks, which are biggest forms of cooperative banks. They operate at the state level and in multi-states. Two or more states have one state cooperative banks. It is the largest form of cooperative banks. The next category is specialized banks, which specialize in providing financial assistance to a particular industry or sector. Example Exim Bank, SIDBI, NABARD, etc. For a specific function, these banks provide financial assistance to those sectors. The first one is the Exim Bank. Here is X stands for the export, and IM stands for the import bank. Import. Together we can call it Export Import Bank, which specializes in providing financial assistance to import and export the sector. These banks operate especially for the import and export business. SIDBI, it stands for Small Industries Development Bank of India, which specializes in providing financial assistance to small industries. These banks operate for the small scale industries. The next one is NABARD, National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development, which specializes in providing financial support to the agriculture sector in the rural areas. These banks operate especially for the agricultural sector. The next one is Regional Rural Banks. It's also known as RRB. The main aim is to provide banking services in rural areas. It also operates for the agricultural purposes in rural areas and small scale industries also, especially in the economically weaker sections. The next one is exchange banks, which are mainly concerned with the financing of foreign trade. It operates for foreign trades. The main function is to provide a facility of the transfer of money from one country to another. Example, Bank of America. These banks operate for transferring money from one country to another. The next one is the indigenous bankers, which are private lenders who charge a very high rate of interest on loans given by them. It should be individuals or entity. They provide the loans to the agricultural or the economically weaker section with a higher rate of interest in the form of loans. To eradicate this function, India has introduced the RRB because it has a lot of interest. It has a high rate of interest. The next one is the savings bank. The main aim is to cultivate a habit of saving among people. Example, post office savings bank. It is operated by increasing the capital of the saving among people. Thank you. We will see you again with another session. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed.